What's up, everybody? Happy New Year's Eve. Um, Thanks for joining us. Super informal tonight. Just us bullshitting essentially. So hopefully you guys get something out of this, and if not, have some drinks and enjoy it regardless. Just have us in the background. So yeah, it's kind of a crazy. Well, I guess I should introduce. Or if you guys want to introduce yourselves, that'd be great.
Hey, I'm Nikita. I'm Nikita Cards on Instagram and on the Discord. And first time talking to Bill here, so I'm excited.
Soccer Cards Cartel. So I mostly dabble in South American, a lot of Uruguayan stuff. Try to be as active as I can on Discord, but I learn a lot from these guys above, and it'd be a pleasure to join you guys this evening.
Yeah, glad for you guys to join me. Thank you. It's if anybody doesn't know about the Discord, there's links in the description below. So hop in there. It's free. Lots of super knowledgeable people. We definitely focus on vintage soccer, but there's channels for cricket and Formula One and modern and all of that. But I would say, a good percentage of it is vintage. So, crazy. Another year is gone. We've covered 2 years of. I think the Discord's been around for a couple years. Is that right? I
think so. I think I joined summer of 21.
Okay. Yeah, I think we started it in September of 2020. So
I remember the day I got invited, and I was like, yes. It was like I knew people would mention it, oh, the vintage Discord, because I was still only in the sports card investor channel, and then some of the people I knew there, I can't remember who I knew there that, but they would bring it up, and then finally I got the invite, and I'm like, I'm in the cool group now.
Yeah, and then you see it's those old dudes talking soccer. So yeah, super cool group.
Hasn't gotten boring.
Yeah, I've been in for about a year and a half now. I don't even know how I got joined. I think somebody posted the link, and then I just joined, and then one thing led to another, and I'm like, oh, well, this seems pretty cool, and then I stayed ever since and been pretty active in it.
Yeah, it's we definitely enable each other, right? We're all we kind of keep pushing it so that we all stay excited kind of about everything, and we see something that somebody else got, and now we're searching for, because we loved seeing it or whatever, so now we got to go find it. And it's pretty fun now just seeing how many people kind of are going their own pathways. You're focused on South America. There's other people that are just totally Italy, and we see all these cards that we may have never seen before, but people are putting more work into, digging things up. And it's just, it's pretty incredible now, because there's so many people doing it that it feels like every day we're seeing something new that somebody's uncovered, or, at least somebody's uncovered for our group that's never seen it before. So, it's pretty cool. So I was kind of just at the beginning, we were going to talk about just the past year, and shit got kind of crazy, things were just flying so high, and then of course the market dumped, and everybody was planning for the World Cup, and it just kind of I guess we didn't realize how many people were planning for the World Cup. So then it just became this monstrous, inventory being listed at the end of the year. So seems like everything's been just this downhill prices and all of that. It's at least, in the main market of PWCC, Golden, eBay, the things that are more easily attainable. I have to imagine prices in South America haven't changed a ton or gotten better by much. But what are your guys' experiences with it? And were you able to grab some good deals because of that, or what's the plan?
Yeah, well, with the World Cup thing, I thought I had this genius vision of buying a bunch of World Cup Prism boxes when they came out and selling them during the World Cup, and that was a fat L. I was like, I really believed in it too. I thought when the World Cup would start, like all the U.S. breakers would be like the main product out. So I thought all the U.S. breakers would get excited about it, and I was just hoping that U.S. hype would get things really going. Not even for the U.S. team, but I just thought this would be the year that people in the U.S. really, really got excited about the hobby in conjunction with the World Cup. And it just didn't work out that way with those boxes and with the most cards.
Yeah, like I think a lot of the stuff to do with the economy had a massive effect on what's going on. Like people, if there's not much money out in the markets, people aren't going to spend money, especially on cards. So I ended up picking up a lot of stuff for, I think, at a cheap price. Even now, I'm kind of just putting marker bids on a lot of items that I think that before were times 3, 4 the price, and now I'm getting it for half of the price or even less. And every week I'm kind of just doing that, kind of have a list that I have, and every time it's just crossing out on that list until basically filling in holes in my collection. And I think I have for the next year or two to continue doing that. And I'm kind of just staying into South America. I dabble a little bit into other countries, but I kind of just sticking to my lane, kind of honing in on that. And then and also, like, I like the issues of the more, for me personally, if South American, it's just the pog styles, the just the for me, it just personally, I like dabbling into South America, so I'm kind of just sticking into my lane, and then maybe as the years go by, I'll go into Europe and different countries. But as of now, I'm kind of sticking in my lane.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, because like, I mean, I was very much more focused until I started the Discord, and then it was like I just saw all of this stuff, and it was just pulling me every which way, and it was like, and then we were all kind of racing to get the same items, for that first year. Everybody's just trying to, it's like the dash out west to get land, the land grab, and everybody was just kind of, I need to get this before I can't, and of course, that's the hysteria that just blew the prices up. But I think that's kind of what I'm definitely trying to do moving forward in 2023, is focus on maybe pieces that I couldn't have gotten when the prices were so high. And so I'm kind of more focused on, getting those things, maybe not spending $100 here, $100 there, but maybe we're going to put, thousands of dollars here, $1,000 there, just so it's stuff that I'm, I really, really want, rather than just something that's like a whim purchase. And so that's definitely my goal, and becoming more focused again, like, pre-war and pretty much England, Spain, and South America. Like those are what I was definitely my focus, and that's just what I enjoy the most. So it's sad that prices have dropped, but it's great that prices have dropped, just because now I'm finding myself back as a collector, more than worried about like the values of things and what I think is going to appreciate the most. And so it's it'll be fun going into 2023, because I think it's going to be the same, right? Like I don't think the prices are all of a sudden going to blow up again. So because now we're back to the way it was pre-COVID, and we're really just waiting on people, there being a higher demand, right? So we just need more people collecting, and that's what's really going to drive prices moving forward. us doing these shows, just shooting the shit, and then also like what Nikita said, with hoping the World Cup would pull more American interest. Maybe it didn't. It was kind of a weird World Cup, right? Is competing with all the North American sports, which it typically doesn't. So it was just kind of a really weird one. So now we're hoping. Now we just move the goal to 2026 now, I guess. But I think that this is going to be fun for collectors in 2023, being able to get some things that they maybe couldn't have last year or 2021.
Yeah. I think I have the same vision as you in terms of kind of like being patient and taking the opportunity to kind of have things come up, hoping that, there's some weak hands out there that are going to let go of some really awesome pieces, like the Balas Pele I picked up. Like, if someone had sold that 6 months ago or a year ago, I think it would have gone for, 5 figures. And I think that's why I got so lucky with that. There was just huge kind of dump of cards. And so that's kind of my goal as well, is to just be patient, watch every single auction, wait for those really special cards that I thought I would never get, and then pick them up for a fourth, a fifth of what they probably would have gone a year ago.
Yep, that's the way to do it. So looking at the bigger pieces, we got a new member joining us. What's up? I see you were able to get your kids to sleep.
Yeah, for now. We'll see.
So you got to be quiet, right?
Yeah.
Digging the hat.
Oh, yeah.
So we were kind of just talking about like the 2022 and then moving into 2023 with our collection. Do you have any thoughts about the last year and, kind of like what your goals are for next year?
Well, yeah, I think I've only been in soccer. I joined the Discord maybe a year and a half ago, but I had collected in the 90s and then kind of left at the end of the 90s when there was that previous crash, but I wasn't into soccer at all. And I think this year it's been, my past year, I kind of went through, I think, a standard collecting process of Pele, Maradona, like the greats. And then thanks to the Discord, expanding that knowledge base out and finding particular players I'm interested in. And I think as far as visions for the future, it's trying to practice some restraint, because it's too easy to get sucked into all the little things, especially now, that seem to be great bargains. But it's easy to kind of spend too much on the weekly PWCC and elsewhere. And so I think trying to have a little restraint and save up for the bigger things that are coming available that I at least hadn't seen in the past year. All of a sudden you're seeing a lot more things come to market. So that's, I think, the short answer for me.
Yeah, I think that's the case, right? We're going to see a lot of bigger pieces moving just because money's getting tighter. They're sucking so much money out of the economy that people are going to, move some things that they likely wouldn't have a couple years ago. So I think it's interesting that like we're all kind of like thinking about buying like the bigger pieces. It almost makes me wonder like buying the smaller pieces might be the better deal, right? Because we're all going to be shooting for these bigger, nicer pieces that I wonder if like it might make sense to just pick up the scraps that people aren't focused on,
I think the hope with the bigger pieces is that people are just dumping them right now, and that hopefully they'll dry up as we go 2-3 years into the maybe more of a slow path. But then, yeah, with what you said, one of the great things about working at PWCC is that I can't bid in the weekly. I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, some of the goals I got this year for coming up is probably going to try to get some of my Uruguayan stuff graded, which is going to be, I know it's going to be a long game just because the issues and the albums are so hard to get that I think that maybe it might take 5 to 10, maybe more years for some of these things to even surface for them to even get graded. So I'm kind of already anticipating that it's going to be a difficult task. But if I can at least get a few issues into some of these slabs, for me, I just think that's one of those things that I have to check mark on the list that I have. And if not, then I just will keep accumulating. And then when eventually down the years, I'll have all these cards ready so that when it is an album surfaces, then I will be ready to grade a bunch of them.
I think out of all this stuff that I've encountered since I've been in the hobby for the past like 3-ish years, the most satisfying has been to get cards graded that have never been graded before. It's just so awesome to like bring that new thing into the hobby and allow other people to grade their cards. And then, you can create an entire new market simply by being able to grade one album or grade a new player from a new country. And suddenly one sale results in a rush of people towards Uruguayan issues or whatever. So being able to have helped PSA grade a couple new cards was like some of the most probably the most gratifying thing I've experienced in the community, in the hobby. So I hope you can do it.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to like what you're with the Uruguayan stuff is like, are you gonna try like CSG? Like, is that kind of like,
yeah,
or
CSG,
are you gonna just hold off for PSA?
CSG, I've kind of just I'm sending them loads of stuff, as much proof as I can, and kind of just seeing what I get back. And then the next few months, I'm gonna basically they're gonna tell me if it's enough for them to slab it or if not. And then so right now I'm just trying CSG because I know currently I think PSA will just not have it. They need more proof. So I'm kind of just throwing as much as I can to CSG. Whatever remains I get back, then I'll go from there. But CSG has graded some of the 1931 Olympico black and white sets that I do have. But even with that said, I don't know if that's even from 1931 100%. They just gave it a 1931, but
Yeah.
I don't see any proof that it's 100% from that year. So I'm kind of like, how sure can they be about some of these issues? Because I know even some guys from Uruguay don't even know. So let alone some of these guys at these grading companies.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest issue is I would almost prefer they do circas as opposed to putting a year, but I'm pretty sure they're pulling that from other grading companies, maybe.
Yeah.
Like SGC when they graded back in the day and then they decided not to or something like that.
Yeah.
Like I think they're just saying, well, if the other place graded it, we're gonna accept that. I appreciate what they're doing, like being a little bit more liberal with their grading policies, just because most people only care if it's authentic or not, But
yeah, even if it's in the slab, like even if like for example, I got a authentic on all of the 6 cards I got back from that Olympico set, and for me, I don't even care that if it's not graded. I just want it encased and it's going to be put away. It's protected. It has at least some kind of time frame of someone knows, okay, this is going to be from this year, and I can stash it away. And like if Al says, if anything happens to me or so whatever, at least it's like recorded. It has some kind of context of what it is.
Yeah. Hey Bass, how you doing?
Great, man. I'm calling all the way from the Netherlands. It's 2 in the morning right now.
So. I'm glad we started early. You're just you're just getting started, right?
Yeah. So this is I won't keep it. I won't keep this not too long. Otherwise, I don't have sleep.
Well, welcome. What's your what were your thoughts on 2022? Did you pick up anything?
Yeah, I picked up. Now, I didn't pick up a lot of cards or small cards like under the 50 euros.
Mm-hmm.
I have some Dutch cards from Wesley. So Robin van Persie, Gold, Prism, and that kind of stuff. And I am collecting also a lot of medals and memorabilia, and there is always, and I see a lot of auctions for memorabilia, and that is what I collect. For 2033, just collect more and making money with other stuff than cards, so then I can keep the cards.
There you go. That's a good plan. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting with the memorabilia, because that's something that I've always kind of, I'm always like nervous on like the being comfortable with it being what they claim it is.
Yes, I understand, but I have some memorabilia which really was auctioned by the player
Mhm.
himself. So that is
Yeah, that's
not.
pretty good provenance.
Yeah, the provenance is really good. So that is for me not a really an issue.
Right. So are you pretty particular with where you're buying it from then, or?
Yeah, yes and no. Uh, uh, it needs to have a good provenance,
Mhm.
but if it is cheap enough, I will take a chance on it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, one moment. I will show you one. I will put the camera one thing down. One moment.
Okay, sure. It's like hard-hitting meteorology right now. Oh no, the power went out. Um, so yeah, that's the memorabilia is an interesting thing. Like I've seen a lot more being sold at like Golden and with like American COAs, which just kind of throws me off, because it's like, how does this company have the knowledge to authenticate this? And maybe that's just an arrogance thing, you know what I mean? Like that I don't feel like Americans can authenticate something, but um that's always scared me on those items. And it doesn't mean that they're not authentic. It's just something that, like, if it's going to be thousands of dollars, I would be really hesitant personally to spend that money on something like that. But I know, there's obviously people interested, because there's some money getting thrown at those items. There's some pretty amazing, like how do you know that these are like Friedenreich's boots, or how do you know that those are, um, something from like the 20s? Like, it's just hard for me to, like, when it comes to those sort of things, like trusting the authentication, I guess.
Yeah, I have here some. I One moment. Here is some an how you call it, a trophy from a Belgian club in 2000, and no, not 2000, in 1930. And here is what I take a chance on.
Okay.
But I need a lot more research to do on this one. But
Yeah, it's
I
probably
have,
easier to do the research with you having it in hand too, right?
yes. And I have here a medal. What the lightning is not very good. Gelsenkirchen
Oh, cool.
from 1974 from Willy van der Kerkhoff. That is a famous footballer from PSV. So and he consigned him himself.
Oh, yeah, I feel pretty good about that then,
Yeah.
Some of the game worn stuff from back in the day is what really concerns me. It's just so hard to, like, some of them didn't even have numbers, so it's like, how do you even know that belonged to that particular player,
Yeah. Yes, you are totally right.
But again, if everybody's thinking the same way I am, you might be able to get something for less money, because I'm a little too discerning, I guess.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I'm totally torn on it, because it's like sometimes I'm like, oh my god, this stuff is so undervalued. Like game worn Pele jersey, like this is so much cooler than a card. But then there's always just that slight like nervousness, like that inability to totally commit to those items for me. And it's funny that like we talk trash about Panini and Topps, but for some reason at the end of the day, like their license and their their stamp of approval on a game worn patch just makes me comfortable. Even though I know it's not totally trustworthy, but yeah, I think memorabilia is so interesting, like going forward and how that can be organized, like to be more trustworthy and stuff. Maybe like I love when they get like the HD images, like the super HD images from like an NBA game, and you can literally see like the thread is the same on this jersey as it was when LeBron wore it or something. But yeah, like Bill, like you said, when you go back to 1930, and it's like, how do you know, wasn't maybe like some teammate of someone and they just want to make a little bit of money or something.
Yeah, or like how do you photo match something, like from
Fully understandable. And I want to talk about Panini a bit. What I found strange from a European and Dutch perspective is that fanatics
Yep.
buying Panini. I found that really strange. I think only Panini America, but not Panini itself, because that is way. I think this is way bigger than Fanatics itself. I found that really strange. The only thing I can't see that Panini, the division Panini America, is bought up, but I see the chances not so very high.
Yeah, I think that the reason they bought Panini America was because of the licenses with the sports, the North American sports. So I think it's less about soccer and more about other sports that Panini doesn't. Panini do other sports. Yeah, so I think that that's probably why they did it, and I'm sure that for them to try to get the Italian Panini would have been a much bigger undertaking. So they chose to maybe pass on that part. And I don't think Panini Italy would even entertain, selling because they know what they have every 4 years, let alone everything they do annually. But the World Cup, I mean, is just so ludicrous for them. Such a huge moneymaker for them, I would imagine. So, like we spend all that money on those, and we know there's millions of each one of them. So, yeah, it's interesting though that they didn't, or maybe they did try and we don't know about it. But I imagine it was just easier to just buy Panini America. So. So what else? Anybody bidding on anything this week?
Yeah, well, I'm going to keep that a little bit more of a secret so I don't get outbid by some.
That's why I was asking.
There's some nice, like in the weekly, there's some nice stuff that you don't see to come up that often from this. Some from the 70s, I'm pretty sure, from Brazil that that are pretty nice items.
76.
Yeah, maybe 76, maybe a 77. But for those I haven't seen come up. Like I was talking to another Discord member, probably in the past, I think one in the past 2 or 3 years. I'm just gonna say the Socrates. They look. Yeah. It looks. Those don't come up that often, and it's doing pretty well, and it's still some time to go. With I think like 4 days left, and I think it's already at a strong price. But I'm not really surprised either.
Yeah, I actually I always put marker bids on a bunch of things, and then I go back and look at my bids, and I saw that one shot like up substantially. I was like, oh wow, this one's going to be fun to watch. Saturday or Sunday. So I think that's going to pull a pretty crazy amount, to be honest.
Yeah, and seeing a lot of the Monte Crudines go up of the Stefano. I think this is the third one in the past 2 months as well. With those, I think the prices are really getting hurt by the PSA discontinuing the grading them. I just got a bunch back from CSG, so they're still grading them.
Yeah.
But I don't know, with that, it's such a controversial issue that it might affect the prices on anything that's slabbed in a PSA, just due to the uncertainty of if it's from the year it says it is.
Yeah, I think that also what hurts it slightly is the fact that we now know that there's earlier Di Stefanos, even if it is that year, because Al happens to show that he got one that was definitely earlier than the Coudins, and so I think that just not knowing that there was something earlier and now knowing there is, and then still having that question mark really kind of is almost like a 1-2 punch, to the value of those. Still something I'm interested in having for the right price. Just not. I don't think it's something I'm going to go out of my way to add, because I don't think it'll ever get resolved. You're going to have people who are very passionate each side of that, and which can cause some issues. Yeah,
and you get that a lot in South American. That's basically South American issues in a nutshell, where you're going to get people that the authenticity is or the year, or even it's so hard to find out sometimes what year these things are from. Like even people from the local countries of Argentina and Uruguay don't even know, and these guys live in these countries and probably have family members from generations that know more than we do, and they still have no clue of what specific year some of these things come from.
Yeah, that's kind of the fun though, right? It's the Wild West.
100%.
That's why I like the South American issues. I think that we kind of get that a little bit with some of the other countries as well, but it just feels like South America more so. There's just less documentation for whatever reason.
So sort of along the lines of the rare issues that have been popping up more lately, I'm curious, as a relative newcomer, like what your thoughts are on the perceived scarcity versus true scarcity, and how we, or at least over the past year, you didn't see a lot of things, and now we're seeing much more of a increase in numbers. And so just maybe thoughts on that, or a starting point for a discussion.
Yeah, it's interesting because like perceived scarcity could actually be actual scarcity, just because like I think sometimes when we keep seeing some things come up for sale, oftentimes it's the same items, right? Like, I mean, especially like with PWCC, you have the vault, somebody buys something and then they're like, well, there's something else for sale I really want, so I'm going to sell this, which I just bought. And then so that goes up for sale, and it's just easier for people to list things that way. So I think, obviously there are more, we see populations going up. And I think that like certain items, we're going to see more and more, right? Like, I mean, I think that there are things that I think surprised me. I didn't think there was nearly as many as we've seen enter the collecting population, I guess. But for the most part, I would say what my expectations were relative to other cards for the most part, from my anecdotal experience over the last decade, has been pretty accurate. I mean, there's certain ones obviously that like we're like, wow, I did not expect the pops to just go that route, because we never saw them for sale. And part of the reason could be just that it's from an area that was untapped, and then once values got high enough, people looked for those items.
I agree more on that. I think that it is also a very big factor.
Just the value was low, that people weren't really looking for them. Yes. And then so it'll be interesting to see moving forward, but I feel like we always think like now we know like what if it hasn't surfaced yet, it can't be out there. And then of course 5 years from now we're like, oh wow, there's a lot more out there, like I think we have a finger on the pulse a lot more than we actually do. So really the only way I treat it is just relative to the other cards. Because that's really all I can base it on, right? Like I can't say for certain that there's only 200 Alifas out there of Pele, right? But that's been a card that's been searched for a very long time. It's always pulled good money relative to other cards. So like that one, I feel more comfortable that it's more, that's been tapped more than like, maybe some French issues or something like that people really haven't been digging in for. Now we see like a bunch of Platini rookies coming, which, we knew there was a decent amount out there, but now it seems like there's a lot more now. And so I think it's just really like, you got to know the history of the card moving, from what it was 15 years ago. Has it always been a high demand card? Like, like the Van Bastens, right? Like those are reasonably rare. And even now we don't see a ton of them out there, right? Like, and I mean, there's been a lot of people that have looked for those. So
Yeah, I don't see them also not on the local marketplaces. So I can confirm that really.
yeah. So like, and that's one that's always been pretty high demand. So like, even like just based on our anecdotal evidence of trying to look for those, just on the open market and not seeing those, I feel pretty good that, it's an area where there are collectors, people are looking for them. It's not something that's, just an untapped market or anything like that. And so I think it's just really comes down to just paying attention to the whole picture, right? And not just saying, okay, well, there's none out there now. Well, why is that? Well, it's because this card was selling for $5 up till 2021. And, now people see it selling for 300 and they're going to go look for it now. So like that's different than knowing that people have been looking for it for the last 15 years, I guess.
And I think I agree with most of what everyone's saying. I think the caveat is also to keep in mind the relative numbers compared to like other sports cards, right? And that 200 is still such a small number, I would say. Whereas you have like in the famous baseball set, American baseball, 52 tops Willie Mays, there's like 2,100 or more. There's 2,100 at least, I think, of his rookie. Whereas, as you were just saying, the Alifa, if there's only 200 after a couple decades of searching, that bodes well for the numbers continuing to stay relatively small.
Yeah, and I think that that's important to, like, the numbers are relatively small, but our demand's just not there yet. And that's the biggest thing is like, we can't, yes, compared to baseball, it's super low, but at the same time, I don't necessarily know that we have 5% of the collecting market that baseball does. And so like the whole thing is betting on the demand side of it. Like, are we going to get more people into the soccer collecting market? And if that's the case, that's where we can kind of see these numbers go parabolic, right? Because there's just so few cards. And if let's say we get to 20% of baseball collecting, well, you're just gonna see things skyrocket, right? Because everybody's gonna want these monster cards. And but maybe we'd never get there, and that's the thing. Like, we got to kind of take a step back and think about that. And is it what's more likely, that we reach 20% or of baseball, or we reach, we stay where we are? I think we have a pretty good chance of getting closer to that number. But it might be 15, 20 years from now. So it's all about patience. And that's going to be a challenge for a lot of especially people who are new into the collecting, because all they've seen is like, I buy a card and by the time it arrives from Europe, it's worth 30% more than when I paid for it. And so, now we're kind of experiencing almost the inverse of that in a way, but things are going to settle. And then it's going to be a slow crawl just based on the amount of people that are entering the collecting market. And so I think you guys really need to, when I say you guys, just whoever is new, needs to put on that patience hat and not expect these crazy blips. It's just going to be like you almost need to use every World Cup as like a data point, and just say, oh, okay, well, what was it in 2022 and what is it now in 2026, and kind of use those, because it's far more likely to be a slow incline as opposed to a sharp up. And I'm gonna step away and grab a drink, so I'll be back.
Yeah,
Okay,
go ahead.
I was just going to say we should be careful what we wish for, though, in a way, right? Because we're all very biased, being a part of the Discord and appreciating these items, these stickers, for their beauty a lot of times, and just kind of the varied, coming from all different countries. Usually multiple countries will have issues of the same stars of the era, and that by if you're entering the market hoping that things are going to go up, that's pretty much the wrong reasons, I would say. And that if everything's going to go up and get prices go out of reach, then it's also out of reach for the collector too. Anyway, this is where we need Bill to comment on this, but I'll stop.
I agree. And also what's holding back these rare issues, I think, is that a lot of whoever has them doesn't want to be first to market. And especially in this time right now, they don't want to be listing it on an auction house when the economy is bad and they don't know what number they're going to get. So a lot of these rare issues aren't even going up for auction because nobody wants to be the first to market. I think after you see certain one of these issues of these rare items go up for sale and people will see, wow, that actually got a pretty good amount, then you'll start to see that will get word of mouth of, okay, well, now there's going to be a more demand for them. But for now, I just think I just know in South America, a lot of the issues are people just don't even want to put it up for auction. Like I haven't seen a graded significant auction of a Uruguayan player in the past, maybe I can't even remember. So I don't, none of these guys they just don't want to sell them. So that is also not helping in the aspect of getting more of these issues out there and graded, which for me personally, I kind of don't mind that, because then it gives me a few more years to kind of keep accumulating. And then hopefully when it eventually does, some of these things do hit the market, I'm kind of a little bit more prepared for that. But I'm not going to be the one first to market with some of these issues that I currently have. It's just too risky.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting balance, because personally, a lot of times when I haven't been first to market with a card, I've gotten burned relatively to the first price. But then also it's like, what does it actually mean to be first to market? Because someone could have thought they were being first to market like 10 years ago or something. Like, I don't know. There's like a point where it meets where I think it's really smart to be first to market, but maybe there's not even enough awareness of Uruguayan issues for you to use that to do well on a first to market sale. But man, every time I have been first to market, it has been pretty good. And every time I haven't, I've seen someone else, steal that spotlight, bring attention to that card, and do so much better than the next sale. But there's a lot of other factors at play.
And yes, that's what I want to say also. It is also what kind of auction house, where in the world, and that kind of factors are important too, for the price. Because I think I have from Percy Kaboom. I have some auction houses here in the Netherlands that will not have the best price, but maybe America, Gordon. I use this as a loose example. Maybe it does. So location.
You
So
muted
Bill,
Bill.
Will, you niet hier.
Oops. Yeah, that's when I on my old podcast that was very common. So yeah, that's a big thing, right? Because even what Americans want isn't necessarily what the Dutch want, right? And so there's just this very like so maybe and just what's available, right? So what we think is rare, but everybody in the Netherlands already has it. It's not going to sell for a lot. But then first one in golden, it's some big time collectors that don't really put the effort in. They just wait till it gets put up at golden. Then we see some crazy prices.
Yep, and that's why it's beneficial sometimes to be first to market, because you've got
Matrix.
What?
Yeah, you were Matrix.
Because you might have 100 guys holding a card saying, "Oh, I'm waiting for someone else to put it up for auction." Then the first one goes up, it sells for, oh my God, so much more than everyone expected. Then you have 20 in the next auction, and then everyone's, and then it's like, damn it.
Or there's now at times when people aren't educated enough about an issue. I feel like that's still very common with South American issues. We see things selling for less than what we at least mentally have calibrated that price to be at. And,
the J Moreno, I think pops up to mind.
Yeah, like that. I mean, that's the first one that like just based on like relative to some other cards that rarity, level of player, just everything. My expectations were a lot higher. I know that it was the same for Al. Even the Dixie Dean that just sold, that was another one I felt like, I had mentioned in one of the premiums that like, if this thing sells for under $10,000, I'm going to be like very thankful I didn't even consider selling, and then it sold for what, 5,000 or something like that. So, it's kind of interesting. I almost feel like there's a, I don't know. There's some sort of marketing that happens in certain cards, and people get really psyched for. And it's really just it comes down to how many people are really interested in an item. And
that happened with my observations with 1986 Michael Jordan rookie that went $500,000, and then record price, everyone sell them, and then trickle down to how much? 10,000? Oh, no, not 10,000, 100,000 or something, or something. So that was very how do you say it? A very good example in this kind of environment.
Yeah, and that's also with when the market was still going up. And so just imagine that now in this type of market, if you being a first to market might be important, but like, for example, like I think it was last January, I sold a George Best PSA 4 rookie, and there really hadn't been one up for sale at auction. And then mine and one other were for sale in that auction. And that was like a much higher graded, like a 7 or something like that. And so I think I got 8. It was 9,600 with buyer's premium, the one I sold. And but then like after that, you saw a bunch of them come out, and exactly like you said. And I mean, they were selling to the point where, it was maybe 30% of what I got for mine. So it's just you almost have to just kind of wait and play the market and wait until you haven't seen it for 6 months before you put it up for sale.
Do you think having the higher graded in the same auction helped or hurt your sale?
I'll be honest, I was pretty pissed because when I submitted mine, I was like I said, I only want this in the auction if it's the only one in the auction. If not, we need to pull it. And all of a sudden the auction comes up and there's another one. And so I was like, I was pretty mad, and I was like, I want you to pull it. And of course, the sales people do their sales thing and say, well, I still think it'll do good and all that. And I was getting nervous because I felt like we were ready for a downturn in the market. So that was the reason I left it in. So I'm not really sure if I feel like it helped or hurt. I'm pretty sure it hurt. But me moving it back a month would have hurt it much more. So that was in January, and we were starting to see the kind of the crumbling happen. And so, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, and this isn't anything specific to an auction house, this is just auction houses in general, they're all about volume and making money. Like, that's how they pay their people, and that's like, I get it. Their goal is to sell as much as they can, quantity wise, value wise. You know what I mean? They don't care if you have, they're not worried if toes are getting stepped on from one consignor to the next. And I get it. Like, if you're running a business and you got that much volume coming through, that's the decision I think you have to make. It's the issue when we have the downturn in the market and people, things start to dry up. Then I think you really have to be a little bit more considerate to your consignors and really curate auctions, as opposed to just let's throw everything in each month and hope for the best. Particularly like with monthly auctions. Weekly auctions are a whole different animal, in my opinion. That's just like eBay, and a bunch of people can throw 10 of an item up if they want. But the monthlies, I think, really need to be curated better.
Do you remember that? Was it the World Cup auction at Golden? That was just insane. Like 1,200 cards, like 10 of each one. That one was wild. I know we're guilty at PWCC of that happening in the weekly, but yeah, that World Cup auction was a different animal.
When it happens with PWCC, though, usually like I request an edit, like if I have two of the same card or something, or if I say it, and usually within like they'll right away change it. So I have actually good experiences with PWCC. If I ever want to change it to like next week or whatever, especially if it's on the weekly, they'll like switch it within an hour.
That's interesting. I've not ever had that happen. I'm gonna have to write a letter.
I use the sales archive. That is a very valuable tool for me.
100, no doubt. The sales archive, like the research for PWCC sales, is fantastic. The PSA website on auction sales, I think, I feel like that's not always updated, but I might be wrong.
It's hit or miss. Sometimes it's really useful because there'll be really old sales.
Yeah.
And that's where it's mostly useful, but it's hit or miss.
And
then,
what?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, what I kind of also have problems with is 130.com. They have also. I do also Pokemon, and they have not always the correct how do you say it, data.
Okay.
And you see, then I go always to therapy, because then that's the simplest changes you see that sometimes. But in my observation, but I don't know about you others.
Terapeak is so frustrating sometimes because, I mean, you just expect it to be better. And it only lets you go back, like, I think a year.
2 years for me.
2 years. Yeah, for Pokemon, I would also try the PWCC sales history because we sell like 1,000 of those, 1,000 Pokemon cards a week. So I check that out too.
I've never used Terapeak. I've always gone to 130 point. It's interesting to know that I probably need to be accepting that data as a little more faulty than I have been. I've been accepting it as the truth. I probably shouldn't be doing that. See?
Yeah, but sometimes it's only PWCC and not always eBay. And that is what I see.
Do you guys use Card Ladder? Because I mean, their tool is pretty incredible.
But I love collecting, but I'm still a student, so so I need the free options, and that at the PWCC and all the resources are awesome, and card ladder is, for my expense, a little too much now.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get most of the information right from the other services, and you don't have to pay, yeah, you take what you can, right?
Nikita, how does Card Ladder fare with the vintage issues? Like, I've always been hesitant to join.
I never use like the ladder part of their site, which is like where it's more organized and there's like charts. I always just use the sales history tab, and that goes back pretty far and has a good amount of auction houses on there. But I rarely use their ladder tool unless I'm looking at like baseball issues or something. But yeah, we have like a PWCC account to log into there. So I didn't even realize that there's like that it's pricey.
I just know that it costs money, right? Like maybe I'm wrong. I've just never even looked at it. I know PSA bought it, right? And so yeah, I should probably dig into that stuff a little bit more. It's always good to learn about those services. So yeah.
So, Bill, if I can just repeat myself, when you had to step away, the prompt I had was being careful what we wish for, as far as, because the way we've been talking right now is much more from like a card selling, flipping perspective almost, and rather than like if we're hoping things grow and they grow so much that we can't just pick up issues that we're interested in. And so, having been in the game a lot longer, what's your perspective on that as far as growth versus sustainable collecting?
So the way I've always kind of collected is that I, just use my discretionary income to buy stuff. And then I'm always, if there's something bigger I want, I'll like use my collection to kind of pay for the cards I want to add, So for me, it's always been that I would use, like, if the value of my collection is going up, but the cost of these cards are going up, there's not as big of an impact on me, right? But if you're somebody who basically holds on to everything you purchase, then yeah, that's going to be a whole different perspective. But that's part of the fun, is kind of weighing what cards do I still want in my collection compared to this card that's available. And, if I don't have the cash to throw at that card, okay, what ones do I want to sell and to kind of, cover that cost? And that's always been part of the entertainment almost for me, for my collection. So in that regard, it doesn't affect me specifically, but yeah, 100% for people who are wanting to, everything they buy, they want to hold on to. Yeah, you would definitely be careful what you wish for. But if things kind of revert back to the way they did prior to COVID, I think that it's such a it's not a dramatic increase. It's just going to be more of a slow crawl. So it's almost like inflation, you know what I mean? So you're not really going to be sweating it too much just because a year ago you could have got it at 100 and now you got to pay 110 or 125 or something like that. Like so I don't know if I answered your question or if I just tangented, but
no, that's fine. And really, I think we could reference PJ's comment in the Discord with something about there's no such thing as a collector, only a good long-term hold.
Yeah.
Like that.
I mean, I've always like kind of focused on values. Like it's not just like, oh, I really want this card. You know what I mean? Like, so I always have had a little bit of a investor thought to what I'm collecting. But there, trust me, there's piles of stuff in there that I can't sell for anything because I just bought because I love the card, you know.
I can attest to that because of that card that you gave me, Bill. That Pele that I won in the giveaway. It was like do you remember? It was like an altered. It was like the weirdest card I've ever seen, and it was altered, and it was in a BGS slab. And I'm like, where did you get this, and why did you have it?
Yeah, I don't even remember it. See, that shows you my mentality is just like, oh, it's out of sight, out of mind. Like, I do remember sending you something. I think I had bought it. I bought it on PWCC, and the title said 5 BVG, and so I was reading it as though it was a BVG 5, and it wasn't. Not the number 5 was the card number or something. So I completely fucked up, and I bought this authentic by mistake. And I was like, oh, I got that for a good deal. It's a 5, and I bought it for like X dollars. And then I looked at it and I saw it was an A and not a 5. So I was like, who can I get rid of this to? I'll get rid of it to the premium members when they win a contest. So
I gonna say goodbye because it's now 3:00 in the morning. So
thank you for joining us. That was really cool for you to join us from across the pond. And
maybe sometime in the future. Have a nice day.
Look forward to it.
Thanks.
All right, good night. So yeah, I make those mistakes from time to time where I very much like don't read everything when I buy things sometimes. So like,
oh yeah, me too.
I'm like not the guy who's going to inspect everything about an auction, and that's to my detriment more times than it's to my benefit. So you would think that I would learn to be a little bit more, a little bit more discerning while I'm reading things, but no. I just go, oh, I want this, bid. And then, oh, fuck. That's not what I bid on.
Happens to the best of us.
Sorry. So Bastian had referenced the 86 Fleer Jordan, and how it's big rise and fall. And I think that's always been an irrational card, right? Because there's over 22,000 of them that have been graded. And it's more propped up by, just a lot of other things besides population. And so I'm curious to maybe take it back to soccer and your knowledge, if you see other like irrational cards in the vintage soccer market.
Well, it's hard to say because Jordan, it's propped up because it's Jordan, right? Like, so like that alone, there's so many people that just want it, right? I mean, it's hard to say in vintage just because like that's totally my focus, and there's just nothing that is, the populations are that high, right? Like, I mean, where do we have to move to get the first soccer card that there's 1,000 graded? Like, I don't even know the answer to that. Is how many Panini Calciatores are there of Maradona? Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, I can't imagine it's 1,000, right? Anybody know that? I don't. I'm gonna look it up right now.
Did you mention that because is it the highest graded soccer card?
I don't even know. I'm just trying to think of what the earliest.
I think it might be for Vint. Like, I think I saw it on a post somewhere where it might be one of them.
There's 330 graded.
Wow, that must be up there with the most
by PSA. So, like, probably from pre-1980s, I would guess that that's one of the highest. The 58 Aquarela, there's a lot, but if you count both the black and the blue, so like, I'm trying to think of like what else would be a high vintage. And I mean, so relative, it's just so ridiculously low, like I think you almost have to get to pre-modern to hit 1,000.
I mean, I'd say probably the closest you get is the Alifa, right? In terms of pop and price being propped up, I think that's really the biggest card.
Yeah.
And I mean, and the Aquarella like 2 months ago or 3 months ago, I mean, Jesus, it was like a PSA 7 was going for more than 100,000. And I was really happy to see that card get its deserved kind of light. But I'd say there's no, the Maradona rookie too had a period where it was pretty outrageous, but it's always like, it's hard to see it as being outrageous when it comes to soccer, because we know how important these guys are and how rare relatively these cards are as well.
Yeah, so there's like 240 Aquarellas. So that's pretty high for like, the era. Yeah, so it's just really difficult to even like, and because I don't really pay attention to pre-modern or beyond or newer. It's hard for me to even think of something where I would feel like, I mean, Aquarella maybe relative to some of the other Pele rookies might be one of them that's propped up more. But I understand the attractiveness of it being like more of a full size item. It's a nice image, very, 3-4 colors on it, but there's negatives. His name's not on the sticker. There's really nothing to the back. It's paper, as opposed to card. So, I mean, maybe that's one of them that is getting propped up a little bit more than others. Because there's others that there might only be 20 of, right? And it doesn't even come close to like what the Aquarellas are selling for, or it's similar. And like the Vav Pele.
That was one that was kind of unfortunately recently super populated, right? Like, I remember when I joined that, I really wanted that card, and it was so rare. And I think recently that someone found some kind of huge collection of them, or there was some huge jump. Are you looking at the pop?
Yeah, I heard about that, but I don't know if I haven't seen that many come to sale.
I think it's just more like high graded ones, I think. And then with the 86 Fleer, I think the interesting thing there too is like, even though Pele has so many less total graded cards, like he has so many more issues. And I think a lot of people are like waiting for certain issues or not interested in some. And then with Jordan, it's like you kind of don't have a choice. I mean, now it's kind of changed, but there's nothing more iconic than his 86 Fleer, and there's not really anywhere else you can go. But except maybe his like 90s cards are awesome. But in terms of his rookie, there's really only one card that's really up there.
I can't find it.
Yeah, it's annoying with some
with
of
the
these
Vav, like how to
find.
58, 59, is it?
I personally like those Vavs are probably up there with like one of my favorite Pelés, just compared to the other ones. It's just, I think both of them, the Vav and then the Titulares are like neck and neck for me for my favorite Pelés. I do like the Queagle, even though it's a 59. I just like the soccer ball in the background. Aquarella is probably like maybe 5th down in the list, but with the pops on those, it's still so low. I think long term, like if you're looking a decade out, I just think that eventually all these pops will still seem super low. And with the amount of people that are coming in, even though if it's not a large amount every year, I think eventually when we look back, it's still going to be super low compared to. I think we're in a good spot right now, and even though it might take a while to get to where these other sports are at, I just think it's a long game more. And the confidence in this collecting space, I have no worries that demand's ever not going to be there for these issues, no matter what country or what years.
Yeah, I think he's the safest bet, right? Like, I mean, if you're gonna bet on soccer, and why not just bet on Pele, right? Like, I mean, it just seems like it's so obvious. Sometimes, like, if you're just if you're a collector, it's a whole different ballgame, right? Like, you're not just gonna want Pele. But if you're like an investor, and that's where I think, some people did really well just coming in and saying, these are the particular cards I want as an investor, because when the market does go up, these are the first movers and, that sort of thing. And yeah, it's obvious, but
And usually the newcomers, that's how it comes. It like they usually will go for these big name players, and then kind of will discover their sidekicks or their supporting casts, and then you're first collecting Pele, and then next thing you know, you're into Didi and Vava and all these other guys. And I think it's the same case with Puskas. Then you find out there's Kosic, and then I just feel like that's how the rabbit hole that's how you go down the rabbit hole of newcomers coming in. And which I think is good, because then like a lot of these famous players do have 4 or 5 guys that were also important into their success of the main player that you are collecting. And then that's how I think the onion gets peeled of like, okay, I'm going to start growing my collection and going into these other players, second, third tier. And I think I just think a lot of these players will soon get recognition that are second and third tier, because if you look at documentaries and if you read up on about them, you'll see that Garrincha was how important he was to the 62 World Cup. And there's a lot of cases like that where the successes of these big players, that the supporting cast had a huge role into the success of the main stars that are household names.
Yeah, and that's when we know that there's more of a, that we're really getting that great base of collector, right? Like that's, it's not just the people coming in looking to get that quick flip. There's people, we have that base of people that are going, okay, Pele's are too expensive, or I got my 1 Pele or 2 Peles, and okay, where am I moving from here? And we've seen that over the last 2 years, just with the players becoming more, stuff that I could buy for $5 now is $500, of players, because back when Al and I were collecting, it was like people didn't give a shit about those players. And now, because there wasn't enough people to collect them, and it wasn't that they didn't give a shit about them, it was just that there was more available than people needed. And so it's definitely, that's good. That's a long game, right? Like that's something that I don't necessarily we're going to see in the next, by 2026, I guess. Like I still think we're so young in this that that might be a decade from now where we're really seeing that base, right? And but I'm willing to wait. And kind of like what you're saying, that gives us the opportunity to buy stuff in the meantime, because it was tough to do that when shit was going crazy.
Yeah, even if you like it or not, like people, like even if you want to or not, people like when it was that this past year of the chaos, you get swept up in it, even if you don't want to. Like no matter how hard, how much you tell yourself, I'm going to stick to my set stuff, well, whatever rules you have, it goes out the window when every week things are coming up and it's a hysteria. It's like, even me, I fell for a lot of stuff that I normally wouldn't have, and it was just because you get swept up in it, and it happens. And now that it's cooled down, I'm really happy that it's kind of settled down a little bit, because it kind of gives you an opportunity to choose what you're gonna kind of go for, and you're a little bit more strategic in what you're putting your money into, and more specific. Also, it's not just you gotta spend every X amount every week because you feel like you're gonna. It's like FOMO, a lot of FOMO in the market this past year.
Bill, I gotta run. Thank you so much for having me. I'd say the last thing I'd say about my goal for 2023 is also picking up PC items. Because like Zlatan, like there was no point of trying to buy Zlatan cards at his peak, because I don't really care about what they end up going for and stuff. So just like random Zlatan cards, and I think it's a good opportunity to pick up.
Just happens to show the rookie.
But thank you so much for having me on. And
yeah, thanks, Nikita, man. Appreciate you doing that. And everybody follow him on IG under the same name, I think. And, appreciate it, brother. Happy New Year.
Happy
Have a
New
good
Year.
one, man.
Nice to meet you guys.
See ya.
See you in the Discord. Bye-bye.
Well, what do you think, guys? We got more, or you got any topics you want to cover?
That's up to you guys. I
had time if there's something you want, but I didn't want to force the issue if we're getting bored or something. So, I'm not bored.
Bill, did you answer your own question? I came in a little late, but did you talk about your review of 2022 and what you want to do going forward?
I think so. 2022, I really slowed down until I thought that we had kind of bottomed out, which was the summer. I always feel like summers are the best time to buy because everybody's not focused on soccer because it's the summer. And so there's no leagues going. People aren't amped up about it. There's no Champions League yet. So usually June, July, early August are in my opinion, the best times to buy in a stable market. So I felt like I was already buying, at a discount compared to the discounts we were getting. But then, the market continued to decrease after that. So I definitely probably bought high on some things. I was trying to catch the falling knife, I guess. And that was, but fortunately it was items that I was happy having. So if I had to pay a little bit extra, it's not the end of the world. But definitely slowed down my buying this year compared to last. But fall, I started just focusing more on bigger items, rarer items, not just expensive items. And I think that's what my goal is moving forward also is really focusing on the eras that interest me, the location, where the cards or stickers were issued interests me more. And then just keep grabbing the stuff I know, at least anecdotally is rare. So I picked up Sarosi Camlers because you just don't see that many of them out there. And, I paid pretty solid on it. And, but I'm not worried about it. That's one I always wanted to have in my collection. I'm happy I have it. And that's not going anywhere. So, I know it's
that's
rare.
the Maltese issue, right?
Yeah. And we saw a bunch of them being sold in succession. And so everybody thought that it was a more common card than maybe what we were speaking about, when Al and I were talking about it. And, but there's no way, when you don't see any of them for a decade.
And in Malta, how small it is.
Yeah.
My stepfather's actually Maltese, so
Yeah.
I know how small the region is, and I
Right.
know when you picked that up, I was like, "There's not much of these out there. There's no way." The population of that island is it's one of, I think it's one of the smallest countries in the world.
Yeah.
So
that's actually so I'm in Detroit and Irish, and the Irish area of Detroit has a very large Maltese settling as well. So it's so a lot of friends and family are married to Maltese, and so I definitely was knowledgeable of the island and just there's very, very few. And I mean, even if everybody smoked three packs a day, there can't be that many out there, and
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's those sort of things where I'm comfortable knowing it's rare. Those are the things I'm more apt to spend my money on. So kind of like what everybody's been saying, you just got to be a little bit more careful about where you're spending your money. You can't just, everything's a deal, right? At least relative to what it was in 2021. So the biggest thing is just kind of figuring out where that money should really go rather than just it should go up for everything. But
Are you gonna grade that with PSA?
I don't know. Like I sent one into CSG, just a like a semi-star,
Yeah.
just to kind of see like what they did. And I mean, I'll probably grade it at some point, but like I'm not a huge grader per se. Like, I mean, yeah, I would like to have it slabbed, but like I'm not gonna spend. I just really don't like how PSA upcharges you based on value. Like, so if I don't plan on selling it, I'm not going to send it to PSA to grade, I guess. So I'm more apt to send it to CSG just so that I get it in a slab. And if I do choose to sell it at some point, I can get it graded by PSA, then.
Yeah, that's
But
one of those items though you kind of keep forever.
yeah, I mean that's my thing. Like it's
Yeah.
just going into the safe deposit box really, and just not once it's certain safe deposit boxes of mine are like time capsules that nothing's allowed to leave it for X number of years. And there's actually one that I don't think I've opened the safe deposit box in 8 years. So
Wow.
like I've not been even in that bank branch for like probably 6 years. So like it's kind of, I can't even tell you honestly, because that was well before I started keeping really good records of like my collection. I can't even tell you exactly what's in there. Like, so that'll be fun at some point when I do go, and open that up, because I'll be surprised at some of the things. And there's some things I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely that I have in there. It's definitely a 4. And I'll go in there, it's probably like a 2 or something, because it's like the fish story, right? Like it's this big, and it's really a minnow. But yeah, so
I have another question. I have a question. So, do you think, since I'm dabbling a lot of Uruguay, do you think that when that World Cup was the first one was based and it didn't have some of the European big nations, do you think that hurts the, like, do you
perception.
think that, yeah, but you know what I mean? Because people can just say, well, a lot of these European nations didn't get to go because it was so far, or the transportation. Like, do you think that hurts the way people look at the first World Cup?
I don't think so. I think that the World Cup, I mean, the fact that it's the first World Cup, regardless, is a huge selling point. So, like, yeah, maybe some people will argue that, and okay, fine, but they did win it, and they were an incredible team. It wasn't like they were just like they won that and that was the only thing they won. Like they dominated South America for the 20s. So like they won the 2 Olympics before that. It's just like there's and how many South American championships did they win? So it's like I mean, you are collecting like my favorite. Like, so I'm super biased. So like, let's be clear. Like I love.
Yeah, me too. I'm also like super. I think like in the like when I look at even like when I'm collecting Uruguay, I always think that like this is the first World Cup. The importance for me, I think, should be like massive. That's the
Bella Vista.
1930.
That's there's Nasazi.
Yeah.
Yep. So that just like I have this sitting in my desk. So it just shows you like what a.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think the importance of that first World Cup of like, and there was a lot of like even like what Andrade and a lot of these guys that also there were people of color playing in the racism that they had went through. There's a lot of history towards that, and even some of the games they played, they walked off because they were getting racial abuse. There was a lot of history towards it, and even like I just think the importance hasn't caught in, but I'm biased, hasn't caught up to what some of these prices should be on some of these guys, which is why I am
Dude,
so.
You've been hammering it too. It's just so awesome to see. Like you are just like you're coming out with stuff, and I'm like, Like it's like literal card porn. Like it is just so just incredible. Like, so you're doing a great job, like whatever you're doing. But
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, I feel like it's super, like, just South America in general. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
like, how many cards can you really say pre-war South America is like are like super appreciated outside of like Al talking about it? Like, I mean, honestly, like there's really not that much, and so that just tells you the lack of knowledge of the collecting community in regards to that.
And maybe that's like because there's not a lot of footage also, but you can also like read up a lot about, there's a lot of books, magazines. Maybe that's because there's a lot of disconnect too, because the videos are few and far in between. Like even last night I was just we're flipping through trying to see some video of the 1930 World Cup, and there's very little out there, but it is still out there where you can actually see these guys in video, which is kind of cool. But I think there's not a lot of footage on pre 1940 of these, especially South American. So that might
it may
affect it a
limit
little
it
bit.
some, but I mean, it's just always going to limit it because it's further back in time, right? And our collecting nature isn't to immediately start at the beginning. It's to start at the end and work our way back. And so it's just going to take longer and longer to get that far back. And I would argue that the majority of collectors, at least in America, are European descent, right? So they will, I mean, just because of demographics of America, that the majority of American collectors are probably drawn towards the European teams and players. So it might take longer for them, unless they're truly soccer like historians, to get to South America.
That's true.
I mean, just as
even,
like the natural like interest, right? Like I'm Irish, so like I would root for Ireland, you know, if they're not playing for, you know, they're not playing the United States or something. But like it's just kind of a natural thing, like I guess a little bit.
yeah, it's true. There's a lot of I don't even have a single, I don't think, UK card.
Yeah.
And that's
so
not
there
just,
you go. Yeah.
I don't, it's not that I don't like it's just I am more inclined to go into Central and South America.
And that makes a lot of sense though, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so it's probably just like almost like a tribalism in a way, right? And
Yeah.
So I think that that's part of it. But if you're somebody who God, I don't even, this is going to sound arrogant on my end, but if you're somebody who really wants to learn about the, you know, origins of the game, you know, you are going to start learning about the UK, you know, back when FA was being formed and that sort of thing. But then you're also going to be paying attention to the Olympics and who at the beginning in history, you know, like who was participating, who was winning. Like many of the Olympics, there was only like 2 or 3 teams, right? Like, so it wasn't even really a tournament. It was just like an exhibition almost. And then you're going to say, okay, well, who was winning the World Cups? And then you get to the World Cup and 1930 is your first one. Oh, okay. Who won it? Wow, that team is pretty incredible. You know, you see all that they won. But I don't know. I think that it may never get what we think they should, you know, like the
recognition.
Yeah. But like, I feel like they are probably some of the most underappreciated players based on their Jimmy, we're talking vintage, bro. Any thoughts about CR7 going to Saudi Arabia? No. He got 75 million a year, bro.
Yeah, go get that money.
Yeah, you only got X number of years to play and make money. I'm not gonna hate anybody for making their money, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, like, you know, I'm not sure he's even getting paid anything close to that in the U.S. So like, do you, boo? And but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that Uruguay. I'm super biased, but that's my jam. I have to actually talk to you about some cards. So
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's the other thing. Like on this Discord, right? And I've said this a few times, but like, Al and I started the premium, and it's like, because we were getting inundated by questions from everybody, and it was just like we were taking so much time out of our day to answer questions that it was like we are almost just doing it to form a wall. So like if you want us to answer your questions, please join the premium. And you see how important it was for somebody's question, you know what I mean? Or if it was just they didn't care about your time and they were just going to ask you regardless. So, but now it's like you guys know way more about, you're so much more specialized in individual areas that really all we bring now is the experience. It's not necessarily like that we know more than you about issues and things like that. And it's just super impressive. Like it's almost like, a proud papa just seeing like all of the just the whole community growing. It's just like incredible, like just to see like how much knowledge, like the Italian collectors have, or, like Nils with the French, or just like so many people just have their specialization, and it's just so cool. And it's like, okay, well now we all have the go-to guy if we need like questions answered, and it's just so cool. And
I think almost every region is covered by someone in Discord. Like there's a go-to for almost, or 2 or 3 guys for almost every country now, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And so anybody watching that's not a member of the Discord, like you don't have to pay for the premium. You can, be a Gen Pop member, and there's so many knowledgeable people about everything. And Jimmy, why are you even asking about CR7? Don't you love Messi? Like, this is just crazy to me. Like, why? Can you post photos here? Wasn't he posting a photo of Messi and his wife or something constantly in our chat? Anyway, yeah. So like, just it's so incredible just to see the growth of the Discord and the membership in the Discord. Like, just it shows you like as time, that's in 2 years, like what's going to happen in 8 more years, when we get to 2030 World Cup, like we're going to actually have like a pretty mature collecting base for soccer. And I think that we'll see a lot more knowledge of the 30 World Cup champions. And, people will know stuff pre-Pele a little bit more than they, because that seems to be like the hard stop, right? Like 58 and forward, people are pretty comfortable with. But like, I bet you if we ask most people who won the 54 World Cup, probably most people won't know the answer to that. So
we know who lost. We know who lost it, unfortunately.
Right. So, like, it's just, but that's just where you get the maturation of the collector base. And I think that, as time goes by, that's one of the obvious teams that people will be drawn to, I think. So, like Nasazi, right? He's the captain of the first World Cup team. Like, that's always interested me, right? And like Abdulio Varela from the 50 World Cup, like he's another guy who just like I feel is super underrated because he played such a huge role for them winning the World Cup, but he didn't score any goals. So it's like people don't appreciate that sort of thing. But I've always been drawn to those captains, the leaders of those teams that, particularly the 50 World Cup, like just willed that team to, pull one of the biggest upsets of ever. So
even like certain fun facts, like Castro with only having, he was missing a hand.
Yeah, but, like just random, like who's going to know that, right? Like,
So it's certain things like that where you start reading about these guys, you're like, oh, that's interesting, and then you go down that rabbit hole, and then next thing you know, you're collecting these guys' cards.
Yep. And it's like I still get drawn to like the 20s Spanish issues just because I think they're so beautiful. Like they're like Art Deco, you know, like just gold leaf, you know, just gorgeous. Like, I mean, who even spends time on the graphics, like, you know, for that back then? Like, and everything's done like hand, you know, printed and everything is just like, man.
And the
like,
backs of
people
them, like
actually
you were
like did
saying,
it back then, you know, like
yeah. And the backs of them, they're like crazy. They even had like the caricatures, like kind of like the ones I got in from Uruguay, but they already had those in Spain, like cutouts of the players. I think Al has a bunch of them. Like they had all types of issues, and in the backs, the descriptions. It was just, I think they were one of some of the best made cards in that from the 20s was from Spain. Just insane.
yeah, that's you know, this we're totally nerding out now, right? Like it's just like and that's why I love it. And this is actually why I'm really happy that I started the Discord, is solely just so I could nerd out with other people, because like it's getting boring nerding out by myself, like talking to friends about shit, and they're like just shaking their head at me, you know. And now I got all you people to. Speaking of, oh, I have a pile here.
Well, I completely agree about the Spanish issues. They're great. I mean, all the different.
The one thing that's
years in the
unattractive to a
20s.
lot of people is the size, right? Like, because they're just not. A lot of them won't fit into the normal PSA holders, right? Like, so I think that Americans in general prefer a certain size card, and those might be just slightly too big. But that doesn't bother me. I don't know if it bothers you guys.
It's not gonna stop me from getting them.
Have you collected much Spanish?
Slightly. Like I would say that's as much as I've going into Europe. Like
Yeah.
a few Alcantaras, a few Zamoras. Never hurt anybody, but I just kind of get a few of those guys, and Scimitar also. I think a few other guys that I've dabbled into, but nothing like too serious.
How about you, Thomas? Mute. Come on, amateur. You're on mute, Thomas. I wonder if I can unmute you. I can't unmute you. Huh. Well, uh-oh, technical difficulties, man. Maybe maybe go out and then I can put you back in. That's. Oh yeah. Yeah, I was just looking at a pile. This is actually my favorite South American set.
Which one is that?
The 1926 Plus Ultra.
Oh, those are super hard to get.
From Argentina. Yeah, it's I don't even know if there's anybody good in this team, but I just felt like it was one of the best condition ones I've seen, because the black border is always so hard to get clean. But oh yeah, look at that.
There we go.
Yeah.
I just got one of those in last week. It was my first one. So
that's exciting.
Yeah, though it's kind of harder than I should have been to track one down, but eventually I chipped away and got it.
Oh. Okay, Thomas answers yes, especially the big three: Zamora, Alcantara, and Samitier. A little bit of Planas. Yeah, That's too bad. Too bad that the audio is not working. I didn't mute him, so it's not me being a dick. Yeah, so you don't have to tell me how, but like, so how did you kind of go about getting, because you've been pulling a lot of good stuff out of Uruguay, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
without giving me like the who or whatever, can you kind of walk through the process of like getting contacts and that sort of thing? You don't have to, you know what I mean? Like, don't give me details, but like maybe
No
more
worries.
just generally.
Okay, so it helps that I do speak Spanish. So so a lot of these guys that do sell, that work eBay sellers, I kind of reach out to them, write to them in Spanish, kind of say, hey, pass me your email, your number, and we can chat on WhatsApp or whatever. So then I contact them, and a lot of these guys, I start just a conversation. Hey, I'm looking for, and I'll send them a list and kind of say, if you ever run across these, let me know, and I'll pay you an X amount on top of just for even finding it. So kind of like a bounty.
Right.
So that kind of gives incentive of sometimes these guys to look for certain issues, and they know if they find it, hey, I have this guy from Canada that will take them off of me right away. And also, my sister is with somebody from Uruguay.
Oh, perfect.
So it kind of,
stick with them, sis.
yeah, it's yeah. So it kind of that kind of helps too, right? Because then you kind of get familiar of what even the region, and you start to just communicate, ask some questions, and also like a lot of the times it's also I feel like what's helped me the most is the giving a list of like, hey, this is what I'm looking for, and then kind of people from the region that have the boots that are down there will kind of go and look for it for you, and then kind of before they show the market, they will run it through to you first, so you can kind of cycle through. If you already have it, or if you think you need another copy, then I'll say, okay, yeah, I'll take it. If not, then I'll pass it along to some and say, you know what, I don't need it, and then they can go and try selling them themselves. So I've kind of, but even some of the stuff that they're even pulling out of Uruguay right now is stuff that I have never seen before. Like, and there are issues that are in that booklet, the little encyclopedia that they have there. But to actually see some of these issues, it's a first for me. For even those 1933 Caramelos Campeones, the figures that I got in, I have never seen them prior to that. I didn't even know they existed. So I'm even trying to see if there's a 34 version of them, which could potentially have Leonidas in a, like, right? If I'm like kind of saying, hey, if these were made in the next year, there would be a Leonidas, because they do make a Penarol and a Nacional teams of both of them. So I'm kind of curious to see if there's a 34 version where it would have a Leonidas da Silva. But it's kind of one of those things where it's like, it's a rabbit hole you go down, and kind of just accumulating all these issues that I can, and kind of just storing them in the vault. And then I'm trying to get 2 or 3 copies of each. That way I can, if I ever want to sell one, I'm kind of not, it's easier to part ways with.
Totally.
Because if I have
and
one copy, it's not
you
going anywhere.
always have a better conditioned one, right?
Of course, of course. So it's kind of easier to part ways with, because some of these issues that I only have one of, I am never letting go until I get a second copy. It's just, it is what it is.
Smart man. Oh, there you go. I love that. And because those are a little oversized, right? So yeah.
Yeah, these are Card Saver 4s. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yep, we can.
Yeah, we got you.
Great, yeah. So the answer was yes, I collect all the big 3s, Zamora, Alcantara, Cimitir, and then some.
Those are definitely the ones I do as well.
You know, a bunch of just this whole set.
Yeah, that's gorgeous set.
Anytime I can find them, I grab them.
Is that the first series, right?
Yeah, this is series A. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the color actually changes well, anyway, we don't have to get into it, but there's a distinct color shift for the later numbers. I don't know if anybody's noticed that before.
So, like it's like
Well,
a
it's like
different
cream
hue.
colored versus it's like much whiter versus kind of this
Sepia or sepia or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's and and sometimes I think that they were just run on different machines in different areas, and like I think that we sometimes have to take a step back and think about like the processes that they did back then. Like I think a lot of because you see a lot of them where the stamps are just different because they are just advertised. They sent all these cards to everybody, and then they just stamp something on the back. But then I have to think that there was times where it was just printed locally at a local printer, and then they stamped more, like when they couldn't get any more. So, I think that's the interesting thing about some of those. Like, it's just gorgeous. Those
like you're saying, the
Muncosas,
backs are just amazing. And then how you're with some issues, you have the different chocolatiers putting their stamp on it. I love that, the variation.
Yeah, we were talking about that on the premium a little bit. Like of these four things, the question was, of these four things, like how do you rank them? And it was, action shot versus headshot, the type paper or cardboard, blank back or something on the back. And I can't remember what the fourth one was. But then rank what's the most important to you. And for me, the most important was something on the back of the four things that were listed, with all other things being equal. Because there's just so much like on the back, like, do you want this or do you want, this, right? Like it just adds a whole new dynamic to the card or sticker, in my opinion. So, or just even like this, like wording, it's just stuff like that. It just makes it so much more interesting to me. And so I really like, one of the first things I do when I get a card is to look at the back of it, just because, I think it's super underappreciated. I think probably being into the Spanish issues really has made that more the case for me, I guess.
It even affects when I like bid for an item, and if I look at the back and it's like I can't even see the wording on it, I will stay away from it. I would just rather wait till another one comes back with a clear back.
Yeah. I mean that's a whole different thing, right? Like having like paper loss or not, and but I just think there's something beautiful about like the backs a lot of times. I mean, some of them are just boring as all get out, like the Aquarellas. I mean, it's just a number, right? Like that's not going to do anything for me, but better to have the number than not, I guess.
So what has your process been with, like, if with South American? Is it kind of similar to how do you hunt down certain items? When you want to get something, what's the process? Is it just kind of wait on eBay, or is it certain contacts you got, like, without getting into too much detail, but how is your process of?
Yeah, so I have contacts in a few of the countries, just from over time. I never got into Brazil, just because I was less interested in Brazil. Like I feel like sometimes they get all the love, and so I always like to kind of go for the more forgotten areas, I guess. So like I never, and I think I do have a little bit of Spanish ability, but I have zero Portuguese. So like I understand that I can probably understand a little bit, but it's way more difficult, to do that. So like it was easier for me to communicate. Yeah, I mean, I've really tapered down even on my buying, like digging in. So I'm sure that my relationships aren't as strong as they once were with my contacts in those countries. So like in Argentina was probably my strongest, contact, where he was just feeding me with incredible old stuff. Like, I mean, it was just like, oh my God, like, how much is this? He's like, oh, it's $5 each, and I'm like, Like I know like there's a whole argument with those Montecudines and like I got like a lot of 60 of them for like $100. It's just like
Sure.
like with like a couple Di Stefanos and different La Machina guys and just craziness, and that's just the start of it. You just all the just random up through the 70s really. I was just like kind of just feed me Seymour kind of thing. And but then it just got to the point like, and I found the contact back in the day because you couldn't really buy from Mercado Libre. I was able to buy from Mercado Uruguay, but I couldn't buy direct from Argentina. So I just on eBay, I looked up Mercado Libre and I found a buyer in Argentina, and that's how I met my contact. And he was just a personal shopper, but then he started digging, for me as well, but he would go pick up the item from wherever in Argentina, if it, and like it was pretty amazing service, to be honest. And yeah, the Uruguay was just like I could buy direct, and then I got in touch with sellers through Mercado, and yeah, like I bought. I don't know why I decided to buy this, but I bought a glass negative from a camera of the 1924 Uruguay Olympic team. It's like it's about yay big. It's kind of got an orange hue to it, and for like $100, and it's like I think it's the same photo that the 1924 Olympic postcards are.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's like it was in the same photo shoot regardless, that negative came from. And just crazy. Like, so that person they were selling like a decent amount of like Nasazi and Andrade back then. So I started talking to them, and they kind of hooked me up, what they could find.
The prices on those two players specifically are actually not cheap at all. Like, if a good issue comes, like I remember, I think this time last year when the Los Andes 1930 Nasazi went up for auction, I had to win that item. I had to pay up almost around $4,000, $5,000. Like, it was a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Like, and that was and I haven't seen one surface yet, and I can only imagine maybe what an Andrade or Nasazi would do now. It may be around the same, who knows? But with those items come up, like if they have a lot of eyes on them, they will have a lot of guys who are interested in specifically in those two players, especially for an issue like that, which CSG and CSG will grade, PSA not yet, but if it can get graded by SGC, they will. I feel like it has a lot more eyes on it because it can be slapped.
So that's. I mean, those guys have always been pretty big. It's like it's almost like worth focusing on the next tier of guys, because like those, like they've always been like a high
profile,
commanded a high price.
Yeah.
That printing plate sounds really cool, though. You should post that.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. I have some photos. I'll send you some photos when I can come across the scans of them.
So I had just a small question about Mercado Libre. Every time I search on there, I can never find anything, like any decent listings at all. And so I just kind of given up.
It's because you got assholes that have contacts that prevent them from going up on there. Like I stopped looking at Mercado Uruguay just because it seemed like nothing ever was coming up. So I just kind of stopped. you might find like a what's the set with the album from 1932, Aguila.
Oh, yeah, Aguila, or there's El Deportista. There's a few of them that are.
Yeah, like the Aguila one seems to be like the most common.
Yeah.
And so you'll find some of those. And then you used to see a bunch of the 1930 World Cup medals that everybody could get for souvenirs, like for sale for like $30. Like, I don't know what they sell for now, but like, Ray asks if that's Captain Jack Sparrow. I don't know. Me?
Yeah, last question. Where do you get a reversible bucket hat? I gotta go after that.
Electric Forest Music Festival.
Oh, nice. So, well, you gotta get the Collect Football on there.
Oh yeah, get it embroidered.
I'll take a reversible bucket.
Hell yeah. Yeah. As I think that everybody's just kind of like almost like Mercado's almost become a last resort for sellers, because they're more apt to like sell. There's other avenues of selling, like on WhatsApp, right? Like there's these groups where people will just post it in these collector groups, and you'll see every so often where like multiple people will come into the Discord to try to sell the same item, which is like hilarious because they're all they're all like lined into the same groups, and so one person will be selling it for like, let's say 1,000, and the other guy will be selling it for 1,500, and it's just but I think that Mercado's kind of become a last resort. I mean, I don't know if you've experienced the same.
I've never used Mercado or anything like that. I've kind of mostly got my stuff off of eBay or directly from these sellers off of it, and get their WhatsApp number and kind of go from there. But
yeah, I think that's kind of probably more common. You might want to check into Mercado to see if you can find somebody, but like, I mean, it's if you're looking for. This is coming from a guy who's looking pre-1940, right? So like there's a lot less there, but there used to be a lot more Di Stefano stuff like on the Argentina Mercado, but like I don't think you ever see anything listed anymore because they know eBay will get to more people. So, or they already know people who are willing to pay plus X $100 for that item. So back in the day, it was a little easier. We used to not want to tell people about Mercado because it was a great resource, but now it's just like everything. I think it's kind of been like we're the locusts and we've just destroyed the field. So we're hitting 2 hours, guys. What do you think?
Yeah, I gotta go.
Yeah, I think it was a good shot.
Yeah, I think we put in a good shift. Thomas, appreciate you showing up, man, and
yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great, and thanks for all the stuff you and Al do, all the content. That's pretty much what sucked me in.
I'm just riding Al's coattails. Like, let's be honest. So we let Al do the talking, and I'll do the question asking. Like that's my goal. So Al's a good dude, man. He's one of the people that, you knew he was a player when he came in showing like back in the day, even showing the stuff that he had. I'm like, this guy just swinging, showing off his shaft here and like just showing everything and like, but super good dude. You wouldn't have known anything. Like you wouldn't have known this guy had one of the greatest collections in the world, or if he was a guy who was buying a $20. He was just excited to get a $20 card, So, I really appreciate about Al. So, but yeah, it's fun. We enjoy nerding out every so often, and so yeah, thanks again. Appreciate you joining us. And
nice meeting you, man.
Yeah.
Same, likewise.
So yeah, now Josue will get to talking about Uruguay in the DMs, we'll go from there. So anyway, everybody that's watching and still watching, I mean, you need to start questioning your life decisions. But on top of that, appreciate you guys watching. Happy New Year's to everybody. Really appreciate you being a part of the Discord or just checking the video out, listening to us nerd out, talking about random shit. So anyway, that's it. We'll see you guys on the Discord, hopefully, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.